They are the same. Yeah. So parallel slopes are the same slope. And then perpendicular slopes, they were something else.
Opposite.
Yes. The opposite sign and the flipped, which is what reciprocal means. You're already in Algebra 2, so Miss Westcott definitely uses the word reciprocal. I'm just trying this year to see if students remember it more. That's all. But opposite sign, and then you flip it. That's perpendicular. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the slope of each line. The first one is MN, like it says. Find the slope of MN. We're going to use the slope formula, which would be y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So remember that it's the rise over the run. That's why the y's are on top and the x's are on the bottom. So we're only looking at m and n. What is my first y? 3. And my second y? 4. My first x? 0. And my second x is 2. Yeah. All right, and then we do 3 minus 4, which is -1. And then 0 minus 2 is -2. This reduces to 1/2. Because a negative over a negative makes a positive. So that was the slope of the first. We're going to find the slope of the second. It's the slope of RS. So this time we're looking at points R and S. So what's my first y? 1. My second y? 4. My first x? 2. And my second x is 8. 1 minus 4 is -3. And then 2 minus 8 is -6. So this becomes positive 1/2. So if you compare them, you get 1/2 and 1/2, which are the same, which makes them parallel. You're correct. So we are going to name them parallel. We're going to say MN is parallel to, what symbol does that look like? The double lines. MN is parallel to RS. Perfect. The last question from yesterday's notes is find the slope of MN and any slope perpendicular. So we're doing the same thing. We're going to find the slope using the slope formula. So y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. What's my first y? -3. My second y, 1. My first x, 2. My second x, -4. What happens when I plug in that -4 and there's already a negative in the formula? Positive. So -3 minus 1 is -4. 2 plus 4 is 6. Do we reduce in math? We do. This reduces to -2/3. So it says find the slope and then find the slope perpendicular to it. So perpendicular is going to be the opposite sign. So is it going to be positive or negative? Positive, and then flip it. So it's going to be 3/2. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and go to the new set of notes. We'll start here. You'll still want 2 highlighters out. Use them one. So the reason that we're doing this is not, this multiplication is not just because you will need to be refreshed on it, but you're going to use it in each of these problems, most likely. Just make sure we are all on the same page. There are other ways, like you can reduce before multiplying, but I'm going to show you the surefire way to get it correct every time, especially since I'm recording and not everyone watching is an honor student, which is fine. So here's how you multiply fractions. You multiply straight across. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 4 is 8. Can this be reduced? No. This is on the PERT. You two are in 10th grade, right? You're in 10th grade. You're all going to take the PERT test. This is like the lower level of the PERT. Before you get to any like algebra 2, anything else, you got to do the fractions. Number 2, it says 1/4 times 8. This one, it doesn't look like a fraction, but we can make it look like a fraction. So how can I make the number 8 look like a fraction? Put it over 1. That doesn't change the value. It just makes it look a little different. So I can still multiply straight across. 1 times 8 is 8. And then 4 times 1 is 4. This reduces to 2. Again, if you know how to cross cancel is what it's called, then you do you. But I'm going to do this just in class. Last one, number 3. Multiply straight across. 10 times 11 is 110. 3 times 6 is 18. These are both even, so they're both divisible by a number, right? Both divisible by 2. So what do we get? 55 over 9. You can see if it's divisible again. What's the only number 9 is divisible by? 3. What's 5 plus 5? 10. Is 10 divisible by 3? So then 55 is not divisible by 3. So it's a general rule. If the numbers add up to something divisible by 3, then that number is divisible by 3. Literally anything in the world. 17, 7, 8, 171. Because 1 plus 7 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 9 is divisible by 3, then this number is divisible by 3. Does that make sense? That's just a rule to know. Did you know that? You're welcome. Perfect. We are going to learn a lot in the next 10 minutes. There are 3 steps to writing an equation of a line. What's going to happen is if you look below, you're going to be given certain scenarios. Like you want to write an equation of a line through a point and a slope, or through 2 points, or parallel to a line. What we want to do is name an equation of the line that fits the characteristics that are given. Our final answer will look like y equals mx plus b. That's our goal. To get to that goal, there are 3 steps, and they're the same 3 steps no matter what the question is. The first one is to find the slope. So go ahead and write that in. Step 1, find the slope. Sometimes they're nice, and they say the slope is 2, but not very often. If they're not nice, like the problem below that one, where they give you any of these scenarios, if they give you 2 points, you have to find the slope. How do you find the slope between 2 points? That formula. That y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Correct. What if they gave you a line that is parallel to your new line? What do we know about parallel slopes? They're the same. So whatever the given slope is, it's going to be parallel to that. It's going to be the same as that slope. And then if it says that the lines are perpendicular, they're going to be 2 things. What are we going to do? Opposite sign, and then you're going to flip it. Okay? That's how you find the slope. Sometimes they're really nice and they say the slope. The only one that students usually grit their teeth at is this one because it's a formula. The other 2, you literally look, and then you decide what the new slope is. If they're parallel lines, they're going to have the same slope. If they're perpendicular lines, they're going to have opposite and then flipped slopes. It doesn't take very much work. So every time, find the slope first. Second step, this is where, if you have those highlighters, I would highlight what I have color-coded, and I'll show you the formula for it. Remember that the formulas are named after what you plug in. So, slope, intercept, look at you, you already know it. Slope, intercept, what are the 2 things you can look at a slope-intercept form and find? The slope and the y-intercept. The next one that we're going to talk about is called the point slope formula, because you're going to plug in one point and a slope and go from there. So again, if you have a color, I would highlight them. And you're not even in this chapter. Look at you for remembering. Right, you're in chapter 3. That's like quadratics.
I think we did it before already.
You did. That's why I'm happy that you remember. Normally students learn it and then move on with their lives. But you knew it was important, which is good. It's all important. So plug in one point and the slope into point slope formula. Here is that formula. And what I color code in red is where you plug in the points. So the x of the point and the y of the point. The m is the slope. I highlighted it in blue so that you could see where you plug in the points and where you plug in the slope. The last thing we want our answer to look like y equals mx plus b, right? So what we're going to do is solve for y so that our answer can be in slope-intercept form, which again is y equals mx plus b. It's me, sorry. I'm ready to use these steps. So you should have all of the notes, the first half of the notes filled in, even the blanks above, because the two formulas I haven't highlighted. The point slope formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and then the slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. All right, we use these steps. Step 1, we want to go through the point 4,6 with a slope of 2. Step 1, find the slope. Do I have to do anything to know the slope of my line? No, it tells me, right? What's the slope? 2. So I know m is 2. Now I'm going to plug in one point, which they only gave me one, and the slope into point slope formula. So I'm going to write it, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I'm then going to write it with a bunch of blanks so that I can just fill in correctly. So y minus blank equals blank. Parenthesis x minus blank, end parenthesis. Because I'm going to plug in the information that they gave me. First thing I'm going to plug in is the y of the coordinate point. What is the y? 6. M represents the slope, which we said was 2. And the last thing is x of the coordinate point they gave me, which is 4. So step 2, plug one point and slope into the point slope formula. Done. Now we want to solve for y equals mx plus b. So what is the first thing I need to do to solve for y equals mx plus b? Distribute. So we got y minus 6 equals 2 times x, which is 2x. 2 times negative 4, which is negative 8. And then my last step to get y by itself is to add 6. So y equals 2x minus 2. I'm going to show you with Desmos what that looks like. Okay, we said y equals what? 2x minus 2. So a couple things. We said in the notes it had to be a slope of 2. Remember that y equals mx plus b. What part represents the slope? M, right? And 2 is the slope, so we got that going for us. And then, other thing, what does that minus 2 mean to me? It's where it crosses, it's the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. Look, there it is. So we knew it had to have which point? It said the slope of 2, and then it said a point. For the 4, 6? 4, 6, which is, let's see if I can do it. Boop. Nope. You see it. You get it. 4, 6. Perfect. So we did it correctly. We have our slope, and then it crosses through 4, 6. All right, the next one. Through negative 7, 8 and negative 14, 2. Step 1 is to find the slope. We can't just look at this and find the slope. We've got to do some math. So we're going to do y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. My first coordinate point is my x1, y1. My second coordinate point is my x2, y2. What's my first y? 8. My second y? 2. My first x? Negative 7. My second x? Negative 14. There's already a negative there, so what happens? Turns into a positive. So then we get 8 minus 2, which is 6. Negative 7 plus 14, which is 7. So we found the slope is 6 over 7. From there, we're going to plug in. Notice how I put 1 point, and especially when it was the previous page, I put 1 in all caps. It's because how many points are we given? 2. You can only plug in 1 point. You pick either one. If you pick in a different one, like let's say, which one do we want to pick? I always pick the smaller numbers. So which one do we want to use? Sorry, the first one. So we're going to plug in negative 7, 8. However, if you plug in negative 14, 2, you're going to get the same answer. Your numbers will get bigger, and then they'll get smaller, and they'll end up being the same. So we're going to use the point slope formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what is the y of the coordinate point we're using? 8. And we said our slope is 6/7. And then last would be our y, or sorry, our x, which is negative 7. Again, when I plug that in, that turns into a positive. So from here, we're going to distribute. 6 over 7 times x is 6 over 7x. 6 over 7 times 7, you can write it off to the side anytime you want. You could put the whole number over 1. Again, if you are good at reducing before multiplying, awesome. I'm just going to multiply straight across so that people don't get confused. 6 times 7 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7. This reduces to 6. The number one thing I see people make mistakes on is positives and negatives. This was a positive 6 over 7 and a positive 7, so this is going to be a positive 6. My last step to get y by itself, I'm going to add the 8. So y equals, perfect. Okay, again, I'm going to show you Desmos. Y equals 6 over 7, x, what did we say, plus 14? Plus 14. So what's my y-intercept? Where is it going to touch the y-axis? At 14. Ta-da, there's that. What 2 points did we say had to be on the line? Negative 7, 8. I got it for a second. Negative 7, 8, and then the other one was negative 14, 2. Well, it's there. There it is. Negative 14, 2. So you get it. All right. The next two, you should like. There's not very much like pizzazz to it. It says through the point 8, negative 2, and parallel to the line y equals 1/4 x plus 2. The first step is to find the slope. Basically what happens is we have a line, right? And this line is y equals 1/4 x plus 2. All right, we've got this line. We want to find a line that is parallel to it. Okay, it's not going to be this exact line. The only thing we need from this line is to know what our new slope is. If that line has a slope of, what's the slope here? 1/4. And my new line is going to be parallel to it. What do I know about parallel slopes? They're going to be the same, so my new slope is 1/4. No work necessary. That's the only thing you need from the previous line, the slope. You can ignore it now. From here, we're going to use the point slope formula. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus, I'm going to put a blank, equals blank times x minus, and then another blank. I'm going to plug in. I want to plug in the point they gave me. What's the y they gave me? -2. I plug in that -2. There's already a negative there, so that makes a positive. We said our slope would be parallel, so our slope is 1/4. And then last would be our x, which is 8. We're going to distribute to get 1/4 x. Again, you can write off to the side. 1/4 times, this is -8. So make sure you know that. You can put it over 1, multiply straight across, you would get -8. 4 times 1 is 4. What does this reduce to? -2. Again, you got to watch these signs. This was a positive times a negative, which makes a negative. So make sure you do that. Our last step is to subtract 2. Y equals 1/4 x minus 4. So y equals 1/4 x minus 4. Okay, so if you look, what is the only difference between these two lines? The y-intercept, yeah. The one that was given us had a y-intercept of 2, so cross at 2. And then ours crosses at -4. But if you keep on going and going and going and going, do they seem to be getting any closer? No, I'm going to zoom out, so they're going to appear to get closer, but they're not. I'm just going to zoom out, just so I can show you that, look at what number we are down here. We're at 150, 160, 190, 200. They're staying apart forever and ever and ever. The other thing is what point had to be, I think this is black, what point had to be on our line? 8, -2. Let me zoom in a little bit. 8 and then -2, which is right there. Perfect. We've got one more like this, and it is the perpendicular line. So we're going to find a line perpendicular to the given line. So same idea. The only thing we need from the previous line is to know what the slope is so that we can decide what is perpendicular to that slope. So what is the slope of the given line? -5. So I want to know what slope is going to be perpendicular to that. It's going to be the opposite sign, it's going to be positive, and then it's going to be flipped, which would be 1/5. So my slope is going to be 1/5. And I'm going to plug in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what's the y I'm going to plug in? 3. And then we said our slope was 1/5. And then our x, that -5. There's already a negative there. So when I plug in my -5, that turns into a +5. We're going to distribute. So 1/5. Again, if you want to write off the side, you can. Or you could know, what's 1/5 of 5? Yeah, 1. Is it positive or negative? Positive. So positive times positive. My last step is to add 3. y equals 1/5 x plus 4. Alright, so the line they gave us was y equals negative 5x plus 1. The line we found was, what did I just do? Y equals 1/5 x, and what did we say? Plus 4? Plus 4. So 4. So, here's our red line. Again, it has to be, the slope has to be opposite sign and reciprocal, which it is. And then what point did it have to have? We said negative 5? Negative 5, 3. Which, you know, if I could figure out where it is. You get it. It's right there. It flashes there. Anyways, there's the point. Here, if you took a sheet of paper, it's hard to show virtually. If you took a sheet of paper, because that's a right angle, and you lined it up between the two lines, if I just sit it on the red line, it will line up with the blue line. So they're perpendicular. Here's why one has to be positive and one has to be negative. Let's look at what happens when they're both the same. Is that a right angle? No. One of them is very clearly obtuse. This one, oops, sorry, that's a box. This one is very clearly obtuse, and these angles are very clearly acute. And the same thing would happen if they were both negative instead. If they're both negative, it still doesn't form a right angle. Okay, so that's why one has to be positive and one had to be negative. Okay, we've got one more thing to do together. There are questions like this on the test. It says name a slope parallel and perpendicular to the following lines. So in order to find a slope parallel or perpendicular, I need to know what the old slope was. What is the only form a line can be written in for me to figure out what the slope is? What does it have to look like? Slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Only when it's written like this can I automatically tell what the slope is. How many of these are written in slope-intercept form? Just the one. So the other two, we're going to have to make them look like this before we can tell what the slope is. But we can start here. It says y equals 3x minus 4. What part of that is the slope? 3. So when I find the parallel slope, I'm just going to write parallel. I know parallel slopes are the same. So it's going to be 3. Perpendicular slopes are not going to be the same. They're going to be opposite sign and the flipped. So opposite of positive is negative, and then flipped of 3 is 1/3. So what is it going to look like? Negative 1/3. Good. The second one, it does not look like y equals mx plus b. So what do I need to solve for to make it look like that? Solve for y. Y is currently attached to 4. So we need to get 4y by itself before we can do anything else. So we need to get rid of that 3x. How do I move the 3x? Subtract it. So can you subtract a letter from a number? No, so you're going to write them next to each other. What order do I want to write them in if I want it to look like y equals mx plus b? Good. Negative 3x plus 12. My last step, I got 4y by itself. Now I want to get y by itself. How do I get rid of the 4? Divide by 4. Divide each piece by 4. This tells me the equation of the old line is negative 3/4 x plus 3. So what is the slope of the old line? Negative 3/4. So parallel to that is negative 3/4. So m equals negative 3/4. Why did I write 34? And then perpendicular will be opposite sign, which is positive, and then flipped, which is 4/3. Last, we've got 2x minus 4 equals 6y. We want y by itself. There are a couple ways that we could do this. What would you like to do first? We could divide by 6. You can also do that if you wanted. We're going to do. So you could do it either way. You could flip first and then divide by 6. Or you could divide by 6 and then we're going to flip it. So 2 over 6 reduces to 1/3. Drop down the x. Negative 4 divided by 6 is negative 2/3. And then, yes, we are going to flip it so that it can look like y equals mx plus b. Just make sure what's positive stays positive. This 1/3 is positive. And then what's negative stays negative. That 2/3 is negative. So what's the slope of this line? 1/3. So parallel to it is going to be 1/3. And then perpendicular to it will be negative 3.